Good day, great day. This is For Another Day podcast, and I am Rick Zapf, your relationship coach, expert, guru, whatever you want to consider me here, sharing insights from working with clients over the past 20 years. This is a special episode. I'm calling them in practice episodes, giving you truly practical knowledge to use in your relationship, whether you're dating, married, or anywhere in between. One of the questions I get asked often is about communication. So today I wanted to really dive into some of the intricacies of communication because communication really ends up to be the lifeblood of a relationship. And so here today, I really wanted to focus for just a little bit of time on what it means to be using I statements and what it means to be using reflecting statements in communication with your partner. And so here, remember, we are looking at trying to improve our communication. Um, since it is the lifeblood, since it is that which makes the relationship world go round, we really need to remember that we're not focusing on the person here. Instead, when we try to bring up these communication times, we're really trying to focus on the problem and not the person being the problem, but really truly where the problem arises, how it arises, with whom does it arise, but staying away from the why question, especially to start with. That one can lead you down a very, very slippery slope that can change the relationship dynamics and communication, and it's not a position that you want to be in. Now, Rick, we argue way too much. I hear that a lot. And since I hear that so often, I really wanted to encourage y'all in this process here. You're really trying to slow down communication. And it's not just trying to get your point across and then be done with it and walking away. Um, and not solidifying your point of view so much that what happens is that there's no room for other information, not even a compromise, but there's no room for other information to be gathered or assessed into this communications dynamic that you have with this other person. We're really trying to get rid of all those personal insults, raised voices or arguments or yelling, those mocking tones that you might have or sarcastic underpinnings that might be there. This is where it does not make communication productive. So I really want to encourage you. You have to be in the right mindset to start using these communication ways and means with each other. I talked about in another episode about, how to stop communication when it gets to a point where you need to cool off. So if you need to refer back to that episode and take a look at where word conflicts and cooling off can be here. But when we're really talking about using I statements, we're really trying to share our concern, our opinion, our lens, or how we look at things with the other person. Because when you say you did this, you are, you said, you, those yous become offensive. They become the sticking point. They become where the other person shuts down. So using I statements, I feel, I think, I know, I believe, I've seen, those are the ones that you want to use. Now, when I've come into experience with clients or even couples in counseling and they start using I statements, I feel, I think, I know, I'd look at them sometimes inquisitively and say, have you gone to therapy before? Because it's not typically a tradition within communication, within culture, to use I statements. I truly believe I statements are our crutches. They're our casts. They shouldn't be used long term. Because if you improve the communication enough, you can get rid of I statements. But that takes some work. So at the beginning, just as you need a cast as the bone heals or a crutch while you're still hobbling along, I'd encourage y'all use these I statements so that it takes away the defensiveness. The same thing holds true, though, when you're looking at reflective listening. And so it's one where you just have to go with each other to see kind of where it is. Now, one more thing with the I statements, they'll come out most often or are most often needed when criticism is used, because that's where the focus is on the perceived personal flaws rather than the changeable behaviors. And with criticism, the first thing that comes up is defensiveness from the other person and that not listening. So you have to find a gentle, easy, calm way of really engaging with the person. So you're trying to find the appropriate time and place to do this. Probably not 1:30 in the morning after both of you have been working long hours or you've been dealing with children or anything like that. I often encourage couples to work on their tone even and their body language, because you don't know how you're looking at the other person and how you're being perceived. You know, you look angry to me. It's like, no, that's just how I'm holding my lips. But truly, the I statements are where you're going to diffuse that criticism the most. Okay. So remember, we're getting rid of harsh, blaming, hurtful expressions, judgments, disapproval, all that goes out the road. And what you're really doing is you're trying to just slow down. Now, slowing down enough that using a reflecting statement is what the other person. So if one person, let's say, has a need, want, or desire, and you're trying to communicate that, the other person doesn't come back with a rebuttal. Okay. It's not about, well, he said, she said, or it's not like, oh, she's got 2 points, I've got 4 points. And we've got to go back and forth so that I win the conversation. No, instead, what we're looking at here is just slowing it down. So only one person is truly talking, the other person is truly reflecting. So I often like to use this one because it's non-pejorative. I mean, if you were to ask the other person, so what was your favorite TV show growing up? Right? It's not one that you're going to get into a conflict about, but it's a good one to kind of practice with here. And so you could very easily just make it a factual, almost like a favorites, and be like Scooby-Doo next. You know, it's like, what's your favorite color? Blue. What's your favorite food? You know, it's like, no, we're not looking for that type of a conversation. What we're looking at is really, truly trying to develop threads of communication with the other person by using reflecting statements. So if that was said, the response back would be, oh, so you went ahead and your favorite show growing up was Scooby-Doo. Clarifying statement, was that when you were 6 or 16? And then it goes back to the other person. Oh, no. That's when I was 6. When I was 16, my favorite show was MacGyver. Oh, I remember that show. That's one where he built something out of bubble gum and a paperclip, right? Oh, yeah, I remember that. And so as you see, it's going back and forth back, but you haven't even asked the other person yet what their favorite show was. Okay. So it's one where you go ahead and ask deeper, ask deepest, and you leave yourself some ability to go back. And then you would ask the other person, well, what was your favorite show growing up? Oh, well, my favorite show growing up was, and you develop that line of questioning. Very reflective, very, very slow, right? You're not trying to accomplish a lot when it comes to reflecting statements. You're trying to take one topic or one part where you have to build a solution towards. So as you develop those threads, then that leaves you this understanding that one, they enjoyed TV when they were growing up. Two, a favorite show was Scooby Doo. Three, they did have other shows that were age appropriate as they were going through. And so maybe the next time you're at the grocery store and you're checking out and you see the little Pez dispenser, candy dispenser of Scooby Doo, you might grab it for that other person just as a joke, just as an aside, because you're like, I recognize and I remember that through that conversation, they treasured Scooby Doo when they were younger, right? And so here you've got all these different, I call them threads, where you can go back and touch on those different areas to still continue conversation and reflections. So once again, this slows it down. And once again, I want to encourage you here. This is about changing your communication styles, practicing it. If you need question primers here that might be helpful, email me, send me a message on here, just ask. I'd be more than willing to share some of those with you. Because if you practice the ones when it's in the good times and you work on those skills, when it comes to the difficulties, the criticisms, the arguments, the yellings, the part where it's so difficult, right? You'll already have it rather than trying to fumble with it when it comes time to actually need to use those skills. So a lot of times I encourage couples, take a few minutes, maybe 15 minutes once a week, just to start practicing and honing those skills. Use your appropriate tones and languaging and I statements if you need them, but really work on what is being said there and how deep you can go with your conversations, and really starting to find out the intricacies and the smallest of details in those conversations. Then you have to implement them in place. And typically when an argument happens, you need to cool off, like I talked about in the previous episode. And once you cool off and your brain is ready, right? Because that's the key here. You can't have higher order thinking in your brain when it's shut down and it's in functioning in a different part. You really have to be ready. Now, it doesn't need to be 3 days of processing to be ready. It can happen within 15 and 20 minutes, maybe 30 at the most. Okay. But really what you're looking at doing is just trying to gather more data in this. And you might not come to a resolution that night or at that point or at that time. And that's okay. Remember, you got to come back to it. And that's what honing happens through coaching. We look at how to increase what's being communicated and how to effectively communicate with your partner where there's the discrepancies, but more so where there's the strengths. And so here, I encourage y'all, if you haven't ever done this before for your relationship, for the sake of your future relationship, start coaching now, start learning now, gather and glean any and all information you have so that you can implement it to make your relationship stronger. Remember, we're looking at trying to build a marriage relationship here that will last a lifetime. Okay. So, once again, if you have questions, go to commandmentscoaching.com for another day podcast. Here to help. And hopefully, this will give you some more insight. God love you all and have a great week.